It was supposed to be a celebration, a warm, nostalgic interview marking a decade of Outlander, the show that changed both their lives. The studio lights were soft, the set simple, 2 chairs, a table, and a lifetime of shared memories between them. But what no one expected that day was that Caitríona Balfe would break down in tears, and that Sam Heughan would be right there beside her, fighting his own. The interview started as usual. Laughter, stories, inside jokes. They reminisced about the first audition, about long nights shooting in freezing Scottish rain, about the bond that grew between the cast and crew. The audience, small, intimate, hung on to every word. For fans, seeing Sam and Caitríona together like this was pure magic. But then, everything changed with a single question. The interviewer leaned forward and asked softly, "After all these years, is there anything you regret, anything you wish you could change?" For a moment, Caitríona smiled, as if brushing off the question. But then her eyes lowered, her voice caught slightly, and the room grew still. "Regret," she repeated quietly. "That's a hard one." There was a pause, a long, heavy silence that no one dared interrupt. And then, with trembling hands, she took a deep breath and continued. "There were moments," she said, her voice breaking, "when I wish I'd been braver. When I wish I'd said more, or been more honest about what I was feeling." The crew froze. Sam, sitting beside her, turned slowly, his expression shifting from curiosity to deep concern. He knew this wasn't scripted, this was real. Caitríona wiped at her eyes and tried to smile through the tears. "You spend so many years pretending to be someone else, playing a character, saying someone else's words. You start to forget to speak your own truth. And sometimes, by the time you realize it, it's too late." Her words hit the room like a whisper that carried the weight of 10 years. Sam leaned slightly forward, his hand instinctively resting on her arm. He didn't say anything, he didn't need to. The gesture alone spoke volumes. She glanced at him, her eyes glistening. I regret the moments I let fear win," she said softly. "Fear of saying too much. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of losing something precious because I didn't know how to hold it." The silence stretched again, and then she looked down, almost to herself, and whispered, "I wish I'd told him what he truly meant to me." Gasps rippled across the small studio. The interviewer didn't move, Sam did, just barely. His lips parted, his eyes lowered, and he blinked rapidly as if fighting back emotion. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if 10 years of unspoken words were hanging in the air between them. Sam finally broke the silence, not with words, but with a quiet sigh. He reached out, gently squeezed her hand, and whispered something only she could hear. Whatever he said made her nod, tears spilling freely down her face. The cameras kept rolling, but no one watching through the lens dared to breathe. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was a confession, raw, unscripted, and heartbreakingly human. Caitríona tried to regain composure, laughing weakly through her tears. "I'm sorry," she said. "This wasn't supposed to happen. It's just, we've shared so much, and sometimes you don't realize how much of yourself you leave behind in the story you tell." Sam looked at her. The kind of look that said everything words couldn't. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet and trembling. "You don't have to apologize for feeling," he said. "That's what made you, you." For a brief second, the strong, confident actor the world knew was gone, replaced by a man holding back tears for a friend who had just exposed her heart. The crew later said it was one of the most powerful moments they'd ever witnessed on set. "It didn't feel like acting," one of them recalled. "It felt like watching two people say goodbye to a version of themselves." As the segment wrapped, Caitríona wiped her tears again and smiled through them. "Maybe regret isn't about what you did wrong," she said quietly. "Maybe it's about realizing what mattered, before it's gone." Sam turned to her, eyes shining, and simply whispered, "You still have time." The room fell silent once more, not from sadness this time, but from the kind of awe that only truth can bring. And when the cameras finally cut, no one clapped. No one moved. They just sat there, watching Caitríona Balfe and Sam Heughan, two people who had given the world a story about love that defied time, live out one of their most human moments in real life. When the cameras stopped rolling, there was no applause, only stillness. For a long time, neither Sam Heughan nor Caitríona Balfe spoke. The crew gave them space, stepping quietly away as the two sat side by side, surrounded by silence thick enough to feel like its own presence. Sam's eyes were red, glistening beneath the soft studio lights. He took a deep breath, his hand still resting over hers, and whispered, "You have no idea how much that meant to me." Caitríona looked up, startled by the emotion in his voice. "Sam," she began, but he shook his head gently. "You've carried so much," he said, his voice trembling. "For all of us. For this show. For me. You've been the heart of everything we've built." Hearing you say that, he paused, his throat tightening. "It just reminded me that we're all human. We all have things left unsaid." The moment was fragile, almost sacred. Years of friendship, trust, and shared struggles seemed to hang in the air. Not the bond of co-stars, but something deeper, more permanent. A crew member later recalled seeing Sam quietly wipe away tears as Caitríona reached over and squeezed his hand. He didn't want anyone to see him cry, they said, but he couldn't hold it in. It wasn't sadness exactly, it was gratitude, and love, and maybe a bit of heartbreak too. In the final segment of the interview, the part that would never make it to air, Sam spoke with rare vulnerability. Looking straight at Caitríona, he said softly, "You know, I think we all regret something. But if you'd said those words years ago, I don't think I would have understood them the way I do now." She tilted her head, curious. "Why?" Sam smiled faintly. "Because back then, we were still chasing the story. Now we've lived it." Caitríona laughed gently through her remaining tears, nodding as if she understood exactly what he meant. And maybe she did. For nearly 10 years, they had lived in each other's shadows, as Claire and Jamie, as colleagues, as friends. They had grown together, stumbled together, and faced more rumors and headlines than any two people deserved. But in that quiet moment, stripped of scripts and spotlights, it was clear that their connection had always been more than professional. It was built on something rare, truth. Later, when Sam was asked by a journalist about that emotional moment, he didn't deny it. "We've shared so much," he said softly. "You go through something like Outlander together, and it changes you. She's one of the strongest, kindest souls I know. I think sometimes we forget to tell people how much they matter until it's almost too late." Fans were quick to notice the tone of his words, gentle, nostalgic, almost mournful. They flooded social media with comments like, "Their bond is something special. You can't fake that." This wasn't acting. This was love, in its purest, most human form. They've spent a decade giving us emotions on screen. This time, it was real. Even Caitríona, known for her composure, later addressed the moment during a live Q&A. "It was raw," she admitted. "You spend years pretending to be someone else, and then suddenly, you realize how much of your real self has been hiding behind that. I guess that day, I stopped hiding." She paused then, smiling softly. "Sam was my anchor through all of it. He always has been." Those words echoed across the fandom, tender and bittersweet. Sam, too, shared his perspective days later on Instagram. Posting a black and white photo of the two of them during the first season, he wrote, "Some moments you never forget, not because they're dramatic, but because they're honest. Thank you for sharing yours." The comments section exploded with love and tears. Thousands of fans left messages thanking them for their vulnerability, for showing that even after a decade of fame, there was still authenticity, still heart. Behind the scenes, crew members said it was one of the most emotional days of filming they'd ever witnessed. "You could feel the love in the room," one said. "It wasn't romantic, it was something deeper. Two people who had been through fire together, finally letting their walls fall." By the end of the day, Caitríona and Sam embraced quietly before leaving the studio. No words were exchanged, just a long, heartfelt hug. A goodbye, perhaps, to an era. For fans who later saw clips from that interview, it became one of the most talked about Outlander moments ever. Not because of drama, but because of its sincerity. And as one viewer perfectly wrote in a viral tweet, "They taught us that love doesn't always mean possession. Sometimes, it's just being there, fully, completely, when it matters most." In the years to come, people would look back on that unseen moment as more than an interview. It was a quiet revelation, of gratitude, regret, and a connection that time could never erase. And for Sam Heughan, whose eyes had filled with tears that day, and for Caitríona Balfe, who finally spoke the words she had held for so long, it was perhaps the truest scene they ever played, the one that didn't need a script.